So this is a reaction to episode 3 of 1899, and well, there certainly were some explosive events at the end of episode 2, and they're pretty much in line with the kind of ideas that I'd already been discussing. So we have a better idea now of what the program's actually going to be about, what it's going to be like. And the opening of episode 3 mirrors the openings of episodes 1 and 2, pretty much so. And that was something I'd mentioned in my previous video. So we also get another musical cue in this one. We've got Echo and the Bunnymen at the end of the episode, The Killing Moon, which is from the 1980s, which is quite interesting because the first piece of music is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, which is from the 60s. Then in episode 2 we get Child in Time by Deep Purple, which is from 1970. And now we get something from the 1980s. So I'm wondering whether we get something from the 1990s in episode 4. That would be interesting. So I was also correct in terms of the way in which the episodes focus on different characters. So episode 1 focused on Mora, episode 2 primarily focuses on the captain, and episode 3 focuses on Ling Yi. And there's also possibly some sort of romantic attachment going to happen between Ling Yi and the stoker, the Polish stoker, Olek. That seems to be on the cards. So what appears to have happened is that Ling Yi was involved. She basically accidentally killed somebody, gave the young prostitute some sort of sleeping draft or whatever it was, some sort of drugs, and the intention was just to knock her out for a bit so that she could take her place and go to England. But what seems to have happened is that the young woman actually died. So she's tormented by this particular tragic event from her past. And that's true of all the main characters. In a sense, the way it's represented is a bit like death by drowning, when the body is thrown overboard in the trunk. And that sort of parallels the death by fire of the captain's wife and his 3 children. So all the characters are basically they've got some sort of tragic event in their past which overshadows their lives, and like I said, that's true of all of them. So we see these various flashbacks which explain this event with regard to Ling Yi. We also learn a few more things as well about Mora. When she goes across in the rowing boat to the Prometheus to see if they can find some more clues, she admits to the captain that she'd had a miscarriage in the past and she can't have children. I think that's obviously a very important fact, and I'm still wondering whether the boy, who's currently unnamed, whether he is actually her son, because she's taking a particularly pronounced maternal interest, a protective interest in him, even though he's not spoken a word. I'm sure he can speak. I think it's just a case of it's not the right time for him to speak. We need to keep things secret. But there's a strong possibility that she is actually his mother. The other thing that we learn is that when the two of them, that is the captain and Maura, go to the Prometheus to see if they can find some more clues, the captain finds a page from the passenger list, and surprise, surprise, Maura's name, Miss Maura Franklin, is on that list. And I'm sure if there were more pages of that available, we'd see other names that we recognise. I think that's pretty obvious. So that's one of the other sort of facts that becomes made known to us. We also see France, the one of the crewmen, who decides basically to let the family of the murdered little girl, Ada, know that she's dead. Now, on the face of it, that looks like a very sort of altruistic thing to do. But in actual fact, when you watch the whole episode, you can see that's part of his wider, bigger plan, because he's trying to get the passengers who are in steerage on his side so that he can actually engineer some sort of mutiny. So there's method in his madness in that respect. He's done this quite deliberately. And he's another one of those characters, just like Daniel, and also the what's the other one? Oh yes, the first mate. Those three characters seem to be the only reason for their existence basically is to set things in motion, to change things, and certainly obviously some sort of full-scale mutiny, which is what appears to be going to happen, will change things significantly on board the ship. There's another little clue that's presented to us as well in respect of the first mate. When France is lowering the little boat with the winch so that the captain and Maura can go to the Prometheus. Shortly afterwards, the first mate opens a panel, kind of almost like a secret panel in the ship, and behind that panel are two buttons, one with the triangle pointing upwards, one with a triangle pointing downwards, and I think there's like a red button in between those two. And he takes a piece of the ticker tape and actually punches in certain details. So now we know that he's definitely in on it. He's actually involved in this whole this whole scheme. And I think I did mention that in my reaction to episode 2. I just had the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. So he sent some sort of message, or he's activated something. It's basically a case of this is what they're doing now. They've gone to the Prometheus. This is what's happened next. So his role, like I say, is pretty clear now. We also see more of Cresta and Angel involved in some sort of mutual masturbation, and you can see that Angel is somebody who basically likes to use people, demean people, hence his relationship with his Portuguese servant. And the other character that we see again, of course, is Daniel. Daniel finally comes face to face as a result of using his little door opening scarab. He comes face to face with the boy. And it's obvious that those two know each other. And Daniel actually says to the boy, "Have you found it?" Notice that it's it, not a person, not him or her, but it. And the boy shakes his head, no. So there's some sort of relationship between those two. I mean, that's patently obvious. And we also now learn more about Lucien. It seems quite obvious now that Lucien has got, he's suffered a grand mal, an epileptic fit. And at one stage it looked as if he might be a heroin addict or something like that. He might have a drug problem. But it seems to me more likely that the drugs that he's taking are to control or to temper in some way his epilepsy. And we see him actually in the room with the fake geisha having a seizure, which it's obvious it's some sort of epileptic fit. And it could well be that the drugs that he's taking might hamper him when it comes to like his sexual performance. That could be explained for what happened earlier on in episode number 1. That's a possibility, I suppose. So we've learned more about him, and it becomes more of a, because he doesn't take advantage of the situation. He just has the girl stay dressed. She doesn't take her clothes off or anything like that. He just wants to be there with her. The other thing that we found out is that the steamship company was bought by an English investor, and his name is Henry Singleton. So I'm wondering whether or not he is the Henry who is Maura's brother. Obviously it's a different surname, but it seems that could be a possibility as well. And of course, in this episode, we learn more in terms of what happened to the various ships. The captain says that they went into dry dock. They were fitted with various devices. There's that strange sort of device that the captain says was installed to measure the steam pressure and send signals up to the bridge. That doesn't seem as if it's there for that particular reason. In fact, it definitely isn't there for that reason. And we later see the way in which that device on board the Kerberos is activated by Daniel. He uses a kind of he connects some sort of device to it, as if it was a kind of remote control device. And suddenly that device springs into action. It's activated. And again, it has this kind of this idea behind it of almost like a sort of steampunk computer whirring away and doing various things. And he has this controller, this remote control. Not a wireless one, but a wired remote control. And it's quite clear that we're in some time that is not 1899, because these kind of things didn't exist. And then of course we come to the absolute killer moment, which sort of rivals what happened at the end of episode 2. At the end of episode 2, we saw the television screens, but here we see something even more remarkable, because Daniel simply flicks some switches, moves some pieces around on the controller, and hey presto, the Kerberos disappears completely. It's teleported someplace, no doubt. I think that's the most likely explanation for it. But he's basically activated something that's caused that to happen. So where the Kerberos ends up, who knows? But it's definitely disappeared completely and just left the Prometheus on its own. So obviously that's something that's going to be picked up in episode 4. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention is the way in which all the main characters seem to have received letters. There was the letter which Maura shows at the beginning, supposedly from her brother. What is lost will be found, all that kind of thing, with the triangle symbol on it, which apparently is the symbol for the shipping company. But it appears that everybody's had one of those letters. Mrs. Wilson's got one of those letters. Lucien has one of those letters. The captain has one of those letters. It looks as if everyone has got one of those letters. Or at least, when I say everyone, I mean all of the main characters that we've been introduced to so far. So I think that sort of covers the episode in terms of the most important events, and in terms of my speculation. I think what I was sort of driving at in my reaction to episode 1 and episode 2 was pretty much on track, because I still think that we're in some sort of simulation. It's a kind of simulation in which somebody is watching the reactions of the various characters, their reactions in particular circumstances, and it might well be that it's like one of those games where you can do it over and over again and have different sort of outcomes depending on how the characters actually react. So that is really that's the kind of thing that I think we're watching here. It's a sort of experiment being conducted, and of course, I mean, being on board a ship, even if we were on board a ship, which I'm now doubting anyway, but being on board a ship would be an ideal place to conduct such an experiment, because it's very much a controlled environment. You're either in your cabin, or you're on deck, or in one of the more public places. So you could run an experiment like that. But I'm not sure that we're actually on board a ship. I think we're just in some people's minds and some people's imaginations. I don't think the ship really exists at all. I think it's just some sort of construct. But more will be revealed in due course. So, as I say, I think I've covered everything there. Have a quick think about what we've seen so far. Yes, I think that really covers the main events that we saw in the programme, and of course I'm looking forward now to episode number 4, which I'm sure will also be called The Something. We've had the ship, we've had the boy, we've had the fog. So what's next? The Something. I'm loving the series so far. I think it's great. I think Andreas Pietschmann is terrific. I mean, the acting's terrific throughout. I like the way that he uses different languages, people having this difficulty in communicating with each other. But yes, I'm enjoying it immensely so far. And I'll be putting up a reaction to episode number 4 in due course.